And Beth Gills wasn't going to be here.
All right. We are unmuted, everybody in the room. I'm going to get us started in just a second. All right, I'd like to call to order the ARPA Advisory Committee meeting for May 31st. Thanks, everybody, for being here and for the little snafu with our meeting date last week. Hope everyone had a nice weekend with a very special Memorial Day services all over the county. It was really great. First item for today is to approve the minutes of our last meeting. Can I have a motion to that effect? Thank you, Supervisor Beatty. And a second, Supervisor Dickinson. Any questions, discussion, or changes? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That carries. Thank you. Okay, we don't have any major action items on the agenda today. I'm hoping we can keep it to under an hour. We've had some really robust discussions. So I'm hoping to just tick off a few administrative items today. And then as we go forward, we're going to have to spend some more time looking at the applications as we receive them. So that takes us to our first discussion item, which you'll see in your packet is the draft application. We saw this last time. There were a few tweaks made to it. And what I'm hoping for today is just to get consensus from the committee on putting this application out to the public. So I will open up discussion on the application itself. It's just one application form that will be available to anybody for really any amount. But if you'll see at the top and at the end, there's special language about applications greater than $50,000. They will be required to follow more stringent quarterly reporting requirements as required by the U.S. Treasury Department and the County Attorney's Office. So what the plan is, I believe, and Ethan or Wayne can correct me, is we'll put this out on the website. We'll get Don Lehman to help us with some press communications, and we will also be contacting anybody who submitted the project solicitation form in the online application that we already had. Make sure that they know that this new robust application is available for them to fill out to request funding. Ethan, you do have the names and email addresses of everybody from before, right? That
Yeah,
submitted?
everyone that provided information previously, we have all that stuff on file.
So if I could make one comment on the provision in there where it's the county attorney's office that's noted about reporting requirements. I don't envision my office playing any role in reporting requirements. We'll play a role in preparing contracts and processing contracts, but not with whatever that should be coming through planning, I believe, not the county attorney's office. Second, the broader question is I had prepared and sent to planning a signature and acceptance page with some proposed language. Maybe back on the 10th of May, I'm not sure of the date. And with the goal being to have some form of a certification from people submitting applications that the information is true and correct to the best of their knowledge. And that's not included. So maybe there was a conversation that occurred in between the meetings about not, okay.
Yeah, that was not deliberately left out of there. The language, the highlighted language that mentions the attorney's office, the intent of that is like, based on some of the conversations we had about reporting requirements for people over $50,000, you know, Larry's department has been helping us navigate what the subrecipient agreement looks like. So we can take the language that directly refers to the attorney's office out of there, but I think the intent behind that language was to make sure that people understood that depending on the category which they're reporting for, I think this will come out in the subrecipient agreement. They're going to be required to report differently.
I would prefer that we keep that in there because I think that refers to anything that you might throw into the contract to lead to reporting requirements on the back end.
Not with the way it's written.
You mean that little language right there?
Correct.
Okay, what if we say as required by U.S. Treasury Department and any contracts with the county?
No, because the contract's going to be entered into, and one of the terms of the contract is going to be that they comply with any future changes required through the Treasury Department rules or regulations in coordination with the Planning Department, and it's the Planning Department that's going to be aggregating, I assume, that information and then filing it. So
So you just want to say that county planning office?
I would
Planning
think so,
Department?
yeah. Just
How about just the county?
Yeah,
And that way it's broad enough that if there's a stipulation because of a certain legality in the contract, because of certain things that are going to happen, you know, the county attorney's office may add a clause to the standard contract or whatever. I'm just trying to foresee any future things that, but to me, it's just the county. And if Mike in Treasurer's office has something peculiar to a certain repayment or a payment process, you know, that they require a certain, I don't know, treasury form or something. I mean, I don't have all of that. So I think if we just leave it, you know, the treasury and the county, because the county is the administering agency for this funding. And it could be anybody in the county that's involved with this could have something come up relative to each specific contract.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yep, that's fine. But the second question, though, is the application will have certain information provided. I'm not talking about subrecipients because there's maybe one or two that we've noted. Really, the majority of the entities are going to be recipients, meaning they're going to receive the money directly from the county. And the question I posed to the committee is whether the applications, there should be some form of a certification that
Oh, yeah.
requires them to attest that the information they're providing is truthful or it's a potential violation of law, which was one of those suggestions I made on the form.
We'll incorporate that.
Yeah.
yeah. Certainly.
Anybody have a problem with that, adding certification language? Okay. Is that good for your purposes?
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah, as
Lemon?
long as if that's
Yeah.
what the committee wants to do.
Yeah.
That was my recommendation.
Yeah, I think, you know, for our purposes, definitely defer to, you know, the county attorney for any of the finer points of legalese. The primary intent here is to just, you know, look at the first couple pages of the application and make sure that, as we discussed as a group, the applications that come in, we have enough information to make decisions so that it does line up with the priority areas that we talked about. If there's any, you know, more of the nuts and bolts stuff that we need to deal with, we can, you know, work closely to make sure that that's included in the final version of it.
Okay, Supervisor Seaver.
Thanks. I have three quick points and questions of comments that I've made prior to today about this, but Chairwoman, I'll just give you the 3 points and then you can determine how you'd like to answer them. Number one, you talk about quarterly reporting, but I think we should have an example of a quarterly reporting format. I think it would be fair for the people receiving the awards or applying that they know what they'll be expected to report in, whether that will be a separate one for under 50K versus over or the same. I do think anyone that gets money or grant funding should have to report back quarterly until the dollars are expended. And at the end of the term, end of the grant, there should be an end of funds report done. Secondly, I still don't see the rubric here on how we're going to determine whether or not the individual or entity will be funded. I think that's something we've heard in the past with other municipalities when they've gone out and being able to learn from some of those experiences. How are we evaluating the data in front of us? And then shouldn't there be a please return to, and it sounds like perhaps that application should be returned to the planning department, some language on here. So if someone's printing it out or trying to mail it or email it back, I'm assuming the certification, you'll have language in there from our county attorney's office that will allow someone to certify electronically. That would make a lot of sense to me, not requiring a wet signature, but in return, is there a separate email for this? Is it, you know, just going to planning, you know, who's going to check that other email? And then again, just confirming that anyone who's applied so far, that they will all be followed up with and track that you've made an effort to reach them. You've sent them the new application by email or mail, and just making sure that people understand they're going to have to fill out a new application, even if they've already sent in a inquiry, if that's what this committee decides. But those are my concerns. I just wanted to voice again.
I got those three, and I'm gonna ask Wayne and Ethan if they have any suggestions about the quarterly reporting format. Do we know? And also, how do you envision the submissions of these applications going?
Well, I would think that we could basically print what we have to send to the Treasury, US Treasury on the report, the type of information, and request that they provide the information that they can relative to what the Treasury is asking us. Then we would consolidate that as part of our either semi-annual or quarterly reports to the US Treasury.
You're saying the Treasury already has reporting?
There's a form that the county accesses online, so we just mirror that, the type of information US Treasury is asking. And that gets attached to their contract as they're reporting.
Yeah, I think, for the under $50,000 awards, we can do that. It's a pretty streamlined reporting.
Yeah.
I think the Supervisor Sieber, there was a little bit of loosey-goosey language in the reporting requirements for the over 50. Because I think, this is my understanding of having read through it, was that depending on the nature of the impact that the funding is addressing, there could be slightly different reporting requirements. But for the under 50, like Wayne said, I think we can do it. It'd be fairly streamlined. But that's a good idea to have quarterly check-ins regardless of the amount.
Man,
Yes.
we apply for so many grants here and get so many, as your department's well aware of. I'm sure we could use language from any one of those grants on how to do the quarterly reporting. And then I also think sending out a draft to the committee for any feedback might be helpful, particularly because there might be a question that we want to add in, specific to Warren County in these funds, what maybe more of a qualitative question that we're asking them. My understanding with the US Treasury, a lot of that is quantitative. So I think there's some good info we can yield from the impact that these funds are going to make in our community on a quarterly report.
Yeah.
How are we getting the applications back to us?
Well, we're not yet.
How are we going to?
we started-
Are we going to set up a separate email address like we've done, or we could use Warren County Strong?
No, I think because there may be some confidential or semi-confidential information that we'll establish a separate ARPA email that'll come to the department and
Okay.
Is there any?
Supervisor
I could
Sieber,
ask
does
that.
that answer your questions? An ARPA email? Okay.
Is it just one question on process? Does it make sense to have the ability to electronically fill out and submit
that's what I'm hoping.
through the IT department so that individuals are entering their information once, we're capturing it, we can then use it for contract prep for reporting purposes rather than getting a bunch of PDF files back or paper copies back?
That's how the solicitation is being done right
Okay.
now. So,
Okay,
We'll have
that's
to-
better than an email. Then
yes.
they're actually
Yeah.
submitting it and we'll have it all electronically right away.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've been going back and forth with some of the nuts and bolts of it.
But we'll try to set up an ARPA portal with IT. Okay. And then the last item, which I think is good to bring up now while we're going over the application, is to think about how to score these, if that's what we're going to do when the applications come back in. And I think part of that will be looking at the reporting requirements, because I think that can help guide us as to distribution of funds and scoring the applications. And like Supervisor Sieber mentioned, any qualitative items that we want to add to the scoring rubric. I think though, from looking at the application, it does provide us a lot of good information that we will want to know when we're trying to evaluate the applications and figure out who we're going to fund and how much. Do you want to say anything, Mr. Miller, at this point? As long as no one from the committee objects. He had mentioned to me that he had some feedback for us on this particular part of the process.
Thank you. Oops, I left one of my notes here. As I mentioned back in the March 30th meeting, I thought it was important that the committee look at businesses that have fallen through the cracks. But where for various reasons, SBA reasons, we didn't acquire, we weren't able to acquire any funding because of the issue we had with our property 10 years ago, within those, actually 11 years ago now, that disqualified us. And just to refresh some of your memory, there's a question in PPP that is, have you ever been more than 30 days behind in a government back loan? And we're 11 years ago we were, and that disqualified us. So that was our reason for coming to the committee. My reason for coming to the committee, asking for some consideration. I think with the way the committee meets, the general board meeting went the other day, there may be more people looking to apply. That is the intent of the board and the committee. And then some people may choose not to because of the scrutiny that we went under a little bit. To have a business apply for PPP, one of the things was required with PPP was submitting to somebody anonymous in the federal government are either our 941s or our 1065s. To share those, to have to share those in a public forum that is on YouTube, I think is rather difficult. And I would think that the committee or have the committees consider having some either subset of the committee or the county administrator and county attorney review financials for businesses that may be looking to apply. One, to see, supposed to compare the 2019 returns versus the 2020s to see where that, is there truly that loss there? Also, the committee might want to consider if a business didn't even make the effort to apply for PPP or restaurant revitalization or arena venue operators, should they be eligible for this fund, these funds? That's, I think, something to consider. And then how much, if somebody has and they didn't get what they needed, there should be some checking against what's on the SBA site, which I've shared with most of the committee members. The thousands of $188 million has already been doled out to businesses in Warren County alone. So that way somebody's not, so to speak, double dipping. Like I said, that was my points. Questions?
Stay there for 1 second. I guess on the financial portion, we're not asking in the application for any detailed financials. Maybe the county attorney can advise us if we get to the point where we're looking at financials, is there a way to protect that information from just becoming
I'm
public?
thinking more for those that are over 50,000.
Okay.
The final rule says that this is supposed to be used to help businesses recover revenue that they had lost due to the pandemic, which again was all I was for was our 2020 situation, which was purely COVID.
Right. I think if you look at question BI, maybe to address one of Doug's comments about if they've applied, we have the question about have you received any pandemic related funding, but maybe we should ask, have you applied for and or received any? That way we can pick up that question as to whether or not they tried for the PPP. Is that good?
Yeah.
Supervisor Sieber?
I would prefer them be separate questions only because I think a lot of people didn't apply because they looked at it as a loan. I mean, as this went on, a lot of people realized, oh, it's going to be a grant. And then looking at the forgiveness already of millions and millions of dollars in our community, I think that a lot of people didn't apply thinking they didn't want to be on the hook for another loan. So I would not hold that against someone for not applying, but I would want to know if they applied and they got money, is what they're asking ARPA for a new need.
Mhm.
You know, I think it's worth saying, is this something new that?
Well, it
has
looks like
arisen?
we'll have space in the portal to kind of explain their reasoning, because it says, if so, please provide the amount and source, or if you've been denied, we can say, or if you didn't apply, like explain if this is a new need.
Right.
We can leave that an open blank, right, Ethan? I'm guessing,
We could, you'll have to
open-ended.
work with the IT department directly. Yeah. But yeah, we could, I can have that conversation. Okay.
Okay, I don't hear anyone saying they don't want to include something like that. So we'll work with IT to make the question, tweak it a little bit. Mr. Almond, did you have any further guidance for us on the other piece? As it
Yes.
relates to the over 50, where we probably will look for more financial details.
I don't see a clear distinction on the front end between above and below 50K. What I'm focusing on is the various categories that apply and the way the Treasury rule breaks out the categories and classifications. And what I've tried to focus on is matching up what the Treasury rule lays out as the lawful categories which can be considered and for which ARPA funds can be used, and trying to match them up to the reporting and compliance guidance that's come out from Treasury to try to link them so that, number one, and number two, to start working to create something, I don't want to call it a rubric, it's not a rubric, more of a matrix, so the committee can actively determine for each recipient that they're going to approve funds for, what the category and subcategory for the award is. Rather than my office trying to divine intent after an award is voted upon and approved by this committee and then hopefully by the Board of Supervisors later on. So that's a lot of words. And I don't want, I'm hesitating because I don't want to dive into details as much unless the committee's prepared to.
I think it's just something we'll keep an eye on, and we'll look to you for guidance as we go forward. We'll just be careful as we get into receiving the applications.
But it's something I think that needs to be, and it is somewhat addressed, I think, in the application criteria, asking the applicant or the potential recipient what category they believe they're requesting under, which will hopefully flow through the entire process. There are some agencies, I'm thinking Empire State Corporation in particular, that did, in doing some research, did ask for financials to do that comparison for lost revenues. But that wasn't really a core of what I was looking at. And it's possible that this committee may not want to grant any funds to any individual business entity just because of a loss of revenue
For revenue, yeah.
as compared to a program. But those are all decisions that the committee needs to make going forward. And, that's a little bit outside of I see the issues, but it's not something I can actively advise the committee on today.
Respond.
Yeah, I think that we really need to know what the loss is. And I understand that we don't want people's financials floating around here. And I'm going to offer something up that I know my staff is going to be extremely upset about. But if we can work out some sort of a system to get the information to my office, we can evaluate it and report back to the committee and say, this applicant X justifies a loss of Y.
Okay,
I mean, I've just thrown that out there as a suggestion, as a thought of how to do this without having, and that way one person in my office that I will swear to secrecy will be reviewing it and making a report back as to what the estimated loss would be. It's just a suggestion.
no, I think that's a good suggestion. We can take that as, advisory or consulting work to the committee.
Yeah.
If you're offering that up from your office, we don't know yet. We still don't have any businesses requesting funding other than the Dome for
Right.
economic recovery. So I don't want to get us too bogged down in a what if.
If I could clarify on
Yeah,
that,
sorry.
but the same requirement does fall under the Treasury rules for nonprofit organizations as well. In
Okay, and
fact,
we did get a ton of those.
yeah, the assistance to nonprofit organizations is defined as programs, services, or capital expenditures, including loans or grants to mitigate financial hardship such as declines in revenues or increased costs or for technical assistance. So
But can I say something for a not-for-profit, they might submit an application that says in 2021, we couldn't hold our summer chicken dinner and we lost out on anticipated $3,000 of revenue. I mean, and that would be that. And they'd certify that that's accurate. And I mean, what else are we going to ask for a not-for-profit? Maybe the sheet showing the income of their last chicken dinner revenue stream.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of, somebody like the Dome, okay?
Okay.
If we have any business operating profitable business, they may not want to share their income statements with this committee or anybody else here. And I'm just offering up a solution that maybe if we have one person in my office review it and then issue a statement that X number of dollars was attributable to COVID. As far as the nonprofits, depending on what they are, I think that's going to have to be individually addressed with each application. As to, if they're asking for $3,000 because they didn't have their chicken dinners, that's pretty straightforward. But if it's because of something else and they lost a year's worth of revenue,
Right.
then maybe they would not want to have everybody know what's going on, and we can review that information.
Okay. Wayne?
I think, as Mike alluded, the county treasurer's office has done this in the past. When the county was looking for rail operators, their office received all the financial information from the operators confidentially, did an evaluation and reported to the committee. I think this is very similar to that, that they would then make an assessment from a accounting perspective. And so I think, Mike, we should take you up on that. The other part is when you look at most of the solicitations that we've gotten from not-for-profits, some of it is, they didn't open or because of COVID or whatever, but a lot of them are for new programs.
Mhm.
And so there's no cost justification of a loss,
Right.
in my opinion.
And
So-
that's okay.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So I think as Mike was
That's a
saying.
great point.
Not all of them are going to have this whole financial analysis.
Right.
So.
Okay, so we'll just keep plodding forward. Everyone's okay with this, with that change that we made on the first page, and then we'll add the certification that the county attorney asked for.
Yep.
We'll make sure that's in there. Ryan, did you have anything?
Okay.
Okay. All right, hearing nothing further on that one, let's move on to the next one. So this is with you again, Mr. Elman. Can you talk to us about the draft sub-recipient contract?
Let me talk about the contracts in general. And what I actually have is a draft copy of the recipient contract, although I'm reluctant to hand it out. I didn't finish it until late afternoon on Friday. And they kind of mirror each other. And the goal was to try to create two form contracts that can be universally applied to all the scenarios of how this committee may issue money under the Treasury rule. So if it's okay with chairpersons, what I'd like to do is maybe just run through some questions, because an initial draft did go out to the chairs and some other individuals for an initial feedback. It's a little confusing because there's multiple possibilities and decision points. And if I can streamline it, it'll streamline the form a little bit more. I guess as a general overview, the contract is going to incorporate a number of other documents into it as exhibits or as attachments. One will be the Treasury rule, with the requirements under the Treasury rule. The second's going to be the Warren County's agreement with the Treasury regarding ARPA funds. And then the third will be the current compliance and reporting guidelines that have been issued by Treasury. So that all that information is at least in the contract, and there's no question as to what the underlying requirements are. And I will get to the next two exhibits as I walked through. One of the initial questions I have for the committee, and I don't know if the committee has a consensus today on it or not, is there's a distinction in the statute and the treasury rules between loans and grants. Loans and grants. And that can continue to be an either or as we move forward, unless the committee has a consensus opinion on whether they foresee issuing any loans on ARPA funds which have to be obligated by the end of December 2024 and then expended by the end of December 2026. The language is there. I'm hard pressed in my mind to imagine what a loan looks like that then gets obligated and expended on that time frame, or whether that was more of a rules and reg from the federal government requirement that they put that alternative language in there. But that would be one decision point if the committee as a whole didn't believe that there would be any circumstances where a loan would be granted. Then we can limit it to just grants, which does to some degree simplify the documentation. So that would be question number one. I don't know if you want discussion on these as I go through, or I can just kind of list them and we can loop back to them.
Go ahead and just list them, please.
The next one is there's really four main categories. There's others, but the four main ones is assistance to households and individuals. And that's where the county, I believe, is directly providing funds to households and individuals under a long list of possible categories. There's actually 11 subcategories, and one subcategory has 6 other categories to it. My perception of what the committee is looking at primarily falls into 3 other categories, which is, again, assistance to small businesses, assistance to nonprofit organizations, and then assistance to tourism, travel, hospitality, and other impacted industries. And when I talked earlier about the committee making a determination for each recipient, it's really the applicant on their face submitting which of those core categories they fall in, and then either the applicant, recipient, and or the committee determining underneath each of those, which category does it fit into. And all I did was I created kind of like a decision tree that just lays out all of those individual categories under assistance to household and individuals, small businesses, nonprofits, and then the tourism category. And I can pass that out to the committee today, or I can email it to everyone after the meeting. The purpose being to identify, as you're making a decision on a particular award, which of the subcategories is the award for, which is going to be important because then the dollars that go to that recipient will be noted appropriately in the contract and then reported back to the county planning office for the appropriate category for preparing and submitting reports. So all the money that goes to ABC Nonprofit Corporation is for a particular subcategory. Whatever they receive and spend is then reported on that quarterly report, and planning would know it's for which reporting category that they received the money and then spent the money. The next question, which is a much broader question, is how this is really going to work. And it's a question, I think, for planning, the treasurer, as well as the committee as a whole, and then the board. Specifically, is it the intent to write a check up front for the entire ARPA award that's being given to a recipient? Or is the funding going to be provided over a period of time through the form of quarterly requests, which would be incorporated or filed with quarterly reports? So you give an award that's over $50,000 to a particular entity is it the committee's intent that in the next couple of weeks or months, the county cuts a check for that entire amount to that entity? Or is the intent that on a quarterly basis, the entity identifies going forward what their anticipated expenses are going to be for expenditures for that award, so that the county is cutting or providing the portion of the award on a quarterly basis, with that recipient then at the end of that quarter providing a report back of the expending of those funds and a request for additional funding for the next quarter. And how that breaks out depends on how I structure the contract. I have seen in some other, which are very difficult to find, but in some other municipal governments across the country, one or two forms where they have a payment application and a reporting requirement that kind of flow together to control and ensure that information comes back to the county as money goes out. So those are kind of the core questions that I would be looking for some further guidance from the committee on, in order to provide something that's more readable and intelligent of a form contract.
I have three, Larry, the three issues: loans versus grants, big categories of awards and your decision tree, and then the distribution upfront or reimbursement, basically. Are those
I don't want to call it, I don't want to call it reimbursement because you're paying it forward for the quarter, but they're letting you know, the entities letting the county know, this is what we anticipate expending from our award this next quarter. So they get the check.
Okay.
And then at the end of that quarter, they're providing a report on those funds and at the same time requesting money for the next. So, again, I don't want to use the 2 or 3 entities that have already received award funding. But the question is it the preference of the committee to issue the entire award on day one versus having a procedure in place where they request a portion of it, anticipating what they're going to expend over the next quarter, require them to submit the report that they've expended those funds in the process of then asking for the next quarter, so on and so forth, really through December of 2026, when all funds are expended.
Okay, I see the dilemma, especially with trying to sort out a form contract, because I don't think all of these are going to be exactly the same. I guess I didn't hear us talking at all about loans. These are grants to provide entities with funding. I see everybody shaking yes. So I think you could
I
probably,
wouldn't say everybody.
I mean, I think we could still leave ourselves the door open if we needed to or wanted to later on, but I think the vast majority of these are grants. And then the distribution of funding, and if we're talking about $3,000, I don't think we need to give them only, what would we do? Give them a 1,500 and then, but I can see there might be a difference with an application that is for over $50,000 that you say, here's some benchmarks, you're going to get the first tranche like we did. And then, at the next quarter, you report on that and ask for more and get another tranche, but not reimbursement. I mean, that's not really the point of this whole thing. It's to provide the funds so they can do the thing that they're applying for.
And
Wayne, I know you had your hand up.
And in
too.
no way am I suggesting reimbursement.
Okay.
I'm suggesting some mechanism to control the appropriation of the funds. And clearly, if it's 3,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 or whatever that number is that the committee determines that it's a one-shot payment, great. But if it's a program that's going to go on for a period of years, the open question I'm looking for guidance on is how do you want to administer those funds and ensure you're receiving back information you need to report?
Okay. So Wayne, I know you had your hand up and then I'll get you Supervisor Driscoll and Beatty. I'll go to you, Beatty, first since you're on the committee. Thanks, Ben. Go ahead, Wayne.
Okay, the first, I think this is a grant program. All right, that's my sentiment. There may be something down the road that says the oddball is going to be a loan, but I think predominantly we're looking at a grant program. And number two, if it's a recovery for loss, it's a one-time payment. If it's a program that's going to be initiated, then as part of the whole contract process, there needs to be a schedule. And I think contrary to what the county attorney said, I'm going to say that schedule has to go through 2024 because we have to obligate all the funds by the end of 2024. If their program falls apart in 2025, we've lost that money because we haven't not expensed it between 24 and 26, and we can't reallocate it because it's past the allocation period.
Mhm.
So I would just have some concerns there that, you know, if we're talking a lot of money for say, all right, let's pick on Community Services Board, you know, there's an allocation there of $1 million.
Right.
If we get to the end of 2024 and they've only spent 200,000, I think we're gonna want to redistribute that, reallocate that funds to either revenue recovery or something.
Mhm.
So.
No, that's a good point. Yeah. And I like that your distinction about recovery for loss would be a one-time payment. Once we get that information from the treasurer's office, that that's what it is, you
Right.
just give it to them.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So Supervisor Beatty?
Well, Wayne said it perfectly. I mean, that's almost, I've written down some things and that's
Oh,
almost.
no.
Yeah, Wayne, you're a lucky man today. You got the Doug Beatty Award. I concur with exactly what he said. So that's what I had written down. So I'm not gonna reiterate what Wayne just said. But, you know, grant and differences and so forth. And it's not a loan program and so forth, so on. So.
Okay. Supervisor Driscoll?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I hadn't expected to speak, but I just wanted to share my experience as a not-for-profit administrator for many years. Oftentimes, an amount less than, we'll say, $50,000, most of the money, if not all of it, is upfronted at the inception of the program year. Over $100,000 or over $50,000. Oftentimes, it's you get 25% upfront on the day the program begins, and then you get 25% at the end of the first quarter, the end of the second quarter, and at the end of the third quarter. And with the hope that if they want to be refunded, they're going to submit that fourth quarter report. I'm not
Right.
saying that that's the best
That's good.
idea, but that's a concept very common with not-for-profits that receive federal, state, or sometimes local monies or private foundations. That's the way that many of them operate.
I think that's good if we give a yearly allocation and distribute the funds 25% every quarter. Does that sound reasonable? Yeah, Treasurer's Fund.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, and Larry, I'm so glad that you're really trying to dissect this contract, because in order for my office to disperse the funds, I want to know exactly how it's to be set up. Because if we're 2 years down the road and some of us aren't here, we still need that contract to make sure that the money is dispersed or accounted for. Right.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is that I'm assuming, since this is a contract between the county and somebody else, a vendor or a private individual or a corporation, that the contracts, before I can release funds, will have to be approved by the board.
The contract.
No, usually it'd be the same as any other contract, meaning there'll be a resolution approving it.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
there'll be a resolution approving the award of funds.
Right.
As we've done already.
Okay.
And then
Just
my
wanna make sure
office
that
will,
Everybody understands that there has to be a resolution by the board to approve the contract, which approves the expenditure of the money before I can release it out of the treasurer's office.
but I just want to clarify that the resolution provides the chairperson authority to sign the contract, but the board usually doesn't approve the contract. Typically, contracts are not prepared until after the resolution.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we have a form for this because it's complicated.
Yeah, we're talking about
We're
the
not
same
buying
thing.
widgets.
I'm just saying it a little differently, but yeah, we're talking about the same thing.
We're on the same page.
Yeah, we're on the same
Yeah.
page.
Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. I'm hopeful that we'll still continue to make this very user friendly. Because I think if we really get into the weeds with this on, especially the under 50,000 and dividing that into 4 different payments. I mean, to me, if you're under 50,000, you put in the required information for the application. We should be expending those dollars, asking for the reports back and not necessarily tie the quarter reports to a funding. With the crime victim program works that way here in Warren County. Treasurer's familiar with some grants that work that way, and they're advantageous to the county and to the user. So I'd like to see the under 50K not go through those same layers, but still have accountability.
I think we can do that. I mean, that's kind of what Supervisor Driscoll was saying. Under 50, we just get it up front and then you report on the back end. Sorry, Supervisor Thomas.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, but as long as there's good reporting for the under 50,000, I mean, to me, 50,000 is quite a lot of money. And even 40,000 is quite a lot of money. I don't want to see the reporting, not that it has to be robust like over 50, but it needs to be adequate. Because we need to be able to know what this money did and
Where it went.
and account for it.
I completely agree with our budget officer. I do think that us seeing the draft format of the report is going to be really important because we can put in some of those additional questions to get more information out of it. But just to go back real quick to your second point, Larry, I don't see a category for governmental or municipalities. And, my concern with that is just, we've seen a lot of applications come through Liza's office. We did the countryside. I understand some of this we can just do as lost revenue, but I still think there should be an application, a subcategory for it. Because you might have a municipality, a local one. I had a talk with Frank last week about an idea with local libraries and education. And, you might have a smaller town that says, wow, I really want to partner and utilize county ARPA dollars for this. I don't think they should be ruled out just because they're a municipality. I think there's a way that some of these small grants really can make an impact in those communities.
I'm hoping Larry didn't mean that they're excluded. They're under that one about.
No, they're not excluded
Yeah.
at all. It was my perception, though, that the application process was really geared towards not-for-profits, potentially individuals, and meaning they're unincorporated associations or individuals with a DBA or small businesses. I didn't envision this application including those entities that are deemed to be municipalities or municipalities, really. But I defer to the planning department on what the intent is. And I thought that this was addressing a particular fund or bucket of money that this committee maybe months ago identified as being for that purpose, for not-profit, small business, and those other non-government categories. Like, for example, in the Treasury rule, there's an entire category on capital expenditures. I didn't list capital expenditures in here
Right.
because I never heard anyone on the committee reference that, and that's the kind of expense I think.
No,
that-
wait, let me just, that's
I mean,
okay.
it's
I
a
want
broad
to,
Treasury rule. There's a lot of different areas covered. And the purpose of what I'm focusing on is those categories, not that they're the only categories.
where we're seeking these applications from outside entities, basically.
That's my understanding. But if the application is for
No,
town
No.
of Queensbury
No.
and the local library, that's not what I've been working towards, and I can adjust. But
no, I don't think we need you to adjust. And that gets us to that other discussion that I want to have in just a second about the written plan. Because I think that'll help us flush out what we're doing with this money and make sure we're all on the same page about that. Just wait 1 second. Did you have something about this? or
I did.
about the-
Just
okay.
on the 50,000, the smaller contracts up to 50,000, if we want to entertain in terms of Supervisor Thomas's concern, we could always entertain like a 10% withhold or a 5% withhold where they get the remainder of the award upon a submission of the report.
Okay. Okay. Are people comfortable with that? A 5% withholding of the total? Okay,
Until they submit their final report.
it's 10% withholding. Are you getting this, Larry?
Yeah, I'm writing it. But is it 5% or 10%?
5.
Five.
Yeah.
Five.
Wouldn't risk have something to do with that? if it is a brand new program, you might want to hold a little bit more back. It depends
Why
on
don't
the
we look at
program
that on an application by
That's what I was-
application basis?
leading towards.
I think for Larry's purposes, for setting out a form, just leave it for 5% for under 50,000. But if we get to one that we feel like it may be a brand new thing and we're not sure about it, we could always that in our resolution. Larry would want us as a committee to say that and put it in the resolution that gets forward to the board for full approval.
Which at the core is why I'm bringing these issues up, so that it's clear what the committee's intent and decision-making process is, so we can actually apply it accurately to these many, many subcategories.
Supervisor Seaver, I cut you off earlier.
I'm just going back to categories. Can we just have an
Yes.
other section then? Because inevitably, the goal necessarily wasn't to capture 3 distinct subcategories. From all the discussions we've had with ARPA, we recognize that there is a need in some municipalities or government or departments that we have here. But we have directed everyone, whether they're government or not. I mean, we've told our county administrator, go in and fill out the application so that we have a paper trail of everything. So I think having an other category, if they don't fall into those, might be very helpful.
If you go
For
back
the
to our,
application, For the application.
for the application, yeah, but
Subcategory, whatever.
the next item on our agenda is talking about a written plan, which I told Ethan, I think we already have a written plan because we have these categories that we've worked on for a long time that initially came from our survey back in October. The ones that say immediate response, which we've dealt with a lot of those, assisting vulnerable populations, which number 1 was mental health services. We dealt with that, or we're trying to. Improving county resiliency was another broad category. Infrastructure, then workforce support, housing, which I would really love to have us have a robust discussion about housing, affordable housing, but we haven't gotten there. My plan is to bring in some experts to talk to us about different funding options. I know the EDC has a subgroup working on housing. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel on that, but anyway. And then the last category was local businesses and not-for-profit support. Those are kind of categories that we put together, but I think what Larry's looking for as far as the application and then treasury reporting is to make sure that we tick the exact box for the treasury rules as to which category it's under, right?
Yeah, what the use is that's permitted for those ARPA funds.
By individual contract.
Yeah, I think so. So that then it flows through to the reporting requirements, because there's guidance that I saw, and I want to defer to planning on this because they're the experts on it.
And there's only the,
That talks about not mixing different categories in a single grant or a single award. So if you have a particular recipient that's doing 2 separate things, those should be 2 separate programs that are
Yes.
administered. You're not blending them together. The reverse of that is you're granting money for a particular area. I'm not going to say a single program, but an area of programming like childcare. And that,
right,
that's
which
a
we said was
category that-
workforce, was under our category of workforce, but for writing out a plan and trying to meet the treasury reporting requirements, does that meet the 5 are there 5 treasury
There's a number of
areas?
categories that
Categories.
the key ones that I picked out were A through there's 4 core areas, A through D in the actual rule,
Mhm.
which again is assistance to households and individuals, small businesses, not-for-profits, and then tourism, travel, hospitality, industries, and other impacted industries. And what I'm focusing on is that part of the treasury rules that say these are eligible uses. You don't have to create something as an eligible use and prove it. These areas are defined by the treasury rule as eligible uses for ARPA funds. Now, there's other areas like the supervisor from Queensbury clearly noted. Those are the core that I thought we were focusing on that this committee was focusing on for purposes of getting money out the door through the application process.
Okay, and I think for purposes of you drafting up some sort of form contract, that's okay, knowing that there may be instances like with the loan issue or, 10% withholding issue where we will need to diverge. And the committee will have to clearly indicate that in the resolution.
I think I have what I need to get a
Okay,
draft out to everybody
Okay.
at this point.
awesome.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes,
Just, for discussion purposes, the February 28th, 2022 compliance and reporting guidance, starting on page 35, lists 7 different categories that you can use, that you report in, and it gives all the special codes. I mean, basically, all that is eligible. So just because it's not been articulated as one of the main areas so far, it's still eligible. I mean, we could still entertain, what number, there's one here, and I think it's going to come up later, on premium pay.
yeah,
Larry didn't mention that, but that's more of a government function rather than a private entity or something that requires a contract document with an outside entity. And so I think that's the distinction to make. If there's assistance to an outside entity, it's going to require a contract. And that's, I think Larry articulated the areas that we've talked about so far that would fall into that contract requirement.
okay. So this item on here about discussing the ARPA fund distribution plan. Do you guys have your staff person on board yet?
No, we had a discussion today about bringing that to committee next committee
Okay,
to elevate the position that we have as a part-time person to a full-time.
okay. Because I think it would make sense if you guys have the staffing to write up a plan. I think a lot of it is already there.
Right. I think that the thing that I keep bringing this up in
Yeah,
is when you look at all the other plans that are out there.
Yeah.
They all talk about some of what we started, like assist vulnerable populations. We set aside $1 million. That's the broad categories I think that we need to do the set asides. And right now, we've only set aside 8.8 million. So
I know.
so where's the rest going to go? I think from a planning perspective, from this committee is like, okay, where do we see the need? And based upon what we have so far, we've only, not even formally, just informally set aside,
Yeah,
8.8. So, I mean, that's where I've been coming from is when I look and see what everybody else has done, and I really like it because it defines a plan for this committee to implement
yeah,
versus just, oh, this one looks good, or.
I know, yeah. To help us as we get these applications, it will say they fit under this, it follows our plan, so that we're not just blowing around in the wind.
Yes.
I agree with that. So hopefully you can get some staffing to help with writing the plan up. And okay, the last number 4, just for discussion, I'm not asking for any action today. This is something Dennis and I did talk about briefly, and it would use up basically a chunk of the money that has not been earmarked or, set aside for anything. It is we discussed in the past, I don't know if it was our ARPA committee exactly. I think it may have been in the fall under Supervisor Hogan's as chair, but premium pay to county employees, which was for COVID related payments for people who were, most at risk. And we found that there was a lot of difficulty in sorting out who was actually working in the office, who was working from home, other situations. And I found in the rule that there's another option for paying county employees a one-time incentive or retention payment. Rather than based on their risk level during COVID, it would be a way to incentivize county employees to stay with county employment. We've heard a lot in the last couple of weeks, especially from our county department heads about loss of county workforce. And I think that that's been hitting a lot of businesses through the pandemic. People going home and then just have not been able to come back to work yet for childcare or health and safety risks, whatever. So setting aside the premium pay and looking at this other category and not for electeds, sorry, Treasurer Swan, The thought is not to pay any of this to electeds, but to come up with a payment amount that would be to full-time employees or part-time employees, less than part-time, and then per diem. And I was throwing out numbers to help get an idea formed, something like 1,500 and then going down from there. $1,500 for one-time payment for a full-time employee. And then kind of scaled back from there, depending on if you work less. Do people want to have a discussion about this? If so, I can put something in writing and put it on a future agenda. I'm seeing some head shaking.
Yes,
Yes, Supervisor Seaver?
please.
No, I
Yes.
think it's really important that we discuss it, and we talked about this even with the education reimbursement plan last year, and we had some subcategories where people are eligible up to a certain amount based on their employment status. And I think if you did a flat amount based on, part-time, full-time, contract, whatever, that would make sense. But I think especially given the dialogue this last round, we need to be having this discussion.
Thinking about the education policy, that also says, that you will stay in county employment for a certain amount of time. So I think it's something like if you've been a county employee through the pandemic, through the end of 2022, you'll get this payment at the end of the year.
We can talk about that.
Any discussion?
Okay, well, that's a good point. So for those who are county employees, Wayne is going to recuse himself. I think Ryan had said that to me as well. I think that makes sense not to be part of the discussion. And not to have further communications about it. That's true, because people do foil our emails and that sort of thing. Supervisor Beatty,
Yeah,
go ahead. I'm sure you'll have.
well, no, no, yes and no. If it's ARPA money, I think they had to be, they should. And if we are going to go this route, and that's a long way away, but they should have been employed by a certain date with the county and still be employed by the county and have a future ending date to receive the money. All right, for example, I'm just throwing this out there. We're going to discuss it more, but they probably should have been employed 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago before COVID hit.
March 2020.
Okay, well, you didn't say that, but okay.
Okay,
Okay, so March 2020 had to be employed by the county, right? Still employed by the county. And maybe we have an ending date that the bonuses, if we go that route, are doled out at the end of 2022 or something. We need to, in my mind, we need a little more parameters here. Who qualifies? Because if someone just came on board a year ago or something, I'm not sure that's the group we want to reward, for a better term. So that's just my thought. We should have a starting, there should be some years of service commensurate with the COVID-19. So that's my 2 cents.
okay.
1.5.
I did get numbers from Jackie about number of employees, but I can ask her number of employees who are fit that category and bring us back a specific number.
I would just ask if you could touch base with me on what section you're seeing, so I can take a look at it before you put a lot of
Okay,
time and effort
That's a good
into
point.
it. Because at least under the eligible uses portion of the treasury rule, I only see the premium pay provision. I'm not seeing something else, but maybe there's somewhere else in the treasury rules or in the statute that you're looking at. So.
I'll connect with you, Larry.
Yeah,
This
we don't have to
isn't,
do it now. I just
this
wanted to
isn't
make sure
super
before-
legal, but it's from February of 22. So it's not the most up to date, but it says under restore public sector capacity,
I see what you're looking at.
you can use them to support and retain public sector workers by providing worker retention incentives. It can't be more, there are specific limitations, but yes, I would love for you to look at it before I spend too much time on it.
Thank you.
And if the committee isn't thinking this is a terrible idea. Okay, all right, that's that. So We'll work with Larry on that and we'll look at it and either bring a proposal back or say that it's not possible. Next steps. How soon do you guys think you can put the applications out? Application,
I think,
because I want to set a deadline for that and a return deadline. We were going to ask for people to provide it by a certain deadline, and then if there's money left over, we'll go back out again. That's our plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Ryan? Can we use Don at all?
Yes.
All right, that may help. I mean, I can do the PDF fillable form concept and whatever, but right now, I mean, we're working on grant application at CFA round. I am 2 months behind on reporting to Department of State on some closeout reports, which is where I'm spending my time. So the short answer is I can't give you an answer. I want to touch base with Don and see what he can bring to the table.
our IT department too.
Yeah. Well, they're not going to do the fillable PDF. They don't do that. So, and I think that's what we need. Because then we can take those fields and convert them over into whatever.
Yes, yes.
And
Yeah.
they'll have them for the.
But those
contract.
still need a little heads up lead time to get it online for us. So assuming that's in the somewhat near future, what does the committee want for a time frame? For people, once it's out in the public, how long are we going to give people to return them?
30 days.
30 days? That seems kind of short. 30 days?
45.
Can I offer a comment?
Yes.
I may have had a misconception. That's been known to happen over 40 some odd years here, but
Then I don't agree with you.
what was that comment?
I said, then I don't agree with you.
I was under the assumption, and we all know what that means, I know, but that we would go through our solicitations and say, these fit the categories that we're after and send them a full application to complete. We still leave the solicitations up there online and we continue to take them. Matter of fact, I handed out more today that had come in. So are we just going to say everybody can fill out an application, or do they do a solicitation? We say, we look at our list here and say, debt service is not allowed. So therefore, D11 is off the table because it's debt service for the Village of Lake George.
There was also like the $5 million for SUNY Adirondack. A couple of the museum in North Creek, I thought was.
Right.
I don't know, because I don't think we should do that, Wayne, because we're saying to anybody in the public, you can fill out this application. You don't have to have submitted a project solicitation idea.
Okay, I viewed it as a two-part process. That you kind of take a first blush through the solicitations and say, and then invite.
Well, I can't support that because I said at the board meeting on Friday, businesses can still submit. And we only had one business submit.
Right.
And I don't want to go back on that word. I'm not willing to do that. I think there's certainly some in there, Wayne, that I don't think will make it very far, but I'm not going to tell them they can't submit an application.
Well, if they're not eligible, they shouldn't. But, okay.
Yes, Supervisor Seaver.
Just in the interest of transparency, I think it's probably important that we just see the applications that come forward. Let people fill out this application we're working so hard on and give them the 45 or 60 days or whatever it is. And then we'll put the hard work in. You'll have a staff member. I wish you could come to personnel on Thursday with that and get that expedited up and going so that we have 2 board meetings now a month to try to move these things along. But I also want to briefly go back to the premium pay or the retention bonus. And I hope that we're going to have more dialogue about this. I respectfully disagree a little bit here with my colleague from Queensberry. I think when we're talking about retention, we should be talking about current employees that are willing to stay on for 6 months. Retention is very different than a COVID payment. I'd support both with ARPA, but I think in front of us here today, we're talking about the retention. But I do think there's a way to have more dialogue on it. I just don't want to have it assumed that we've talked it out. I hope not.
No, my plan is to put it on the agenda for action, if we can legally do it.
But I would like to see all the applications. I was contacted this weekend by a not-for-profit that applied, but I don't see them on my list today. So I know before we'd have to do an update, daily, well, once a week Mike would do it. And I would see a list of new comments that came through or new forms that were filled out. So I don't know if you ran this today, Wayne or Ethan, but I can see that one is missing. So I think it would be good to see a spreadsheet of those that have applied, the dates, when we went back, gave them the application, and then make sure we're putting it through this committee.
Can we do both? Send out the people that have already submitted something and put the application out there for
Yeah.
anybody who didn't? I mean,
Yeah. I guess, and to be respectful of Wayne, your concerns, are there other ones in there that you think are completely not eligible?
Yes.
Because we could contact them and say, we have concerns about your eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, there are some here where people have expressed ideas, invasive species. I mean, I don't know how that, they didn't put dollar amounts there, but they're,
Well, I'm assuming that the application will help weed out some of them, not to be crude, but some were just ideas. Some was, I remember one was about a sidewalk. Someone should do something about sidewalks. Well, where?
Yeah.
Yes, and then Supervisor Wild.
To your point, last year, we did look at all of them, and what happened was someone said something about the city of Glens Falls, and we could forward that down, and that was already in the works. We identified funding and opportunities just by reviewing all these applications and having the dialogue, and helped many entities before this funding ever got here. So I do think it's a great dialogue, and I appreciate the efforts.
It is a lot of work. Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, thank you. I just have to put myself in the place of an applicant. And if we know that their application isn't going to be considered, or won't be considered, or may not be considered, then we're going to ask them to go through and fill out a full application, even though we already know that ahead of time. I think it would be wise to have that quick overview to say, is this going to fall within the top 50% of things we consider, or the bottom 50%? And just make
Why-
that determination.
Sorry. I shouldn't-
Because you're taking valuable time and resources away from nonprofits or businesses that may never get considered. So just a consideration.
Why don't
Thank you.
we, for our next meeting, have Wayne bring us some of the ones that you think are not eligible? And we can talk about that. I mean, it doesn't seem like, if we do 45 days, that still gives us time to have that discussion before the deadline of applications coming in. Not to mention the discussion about the rubric for scoring. I'd like to have that at least started before we have applications coming in the door.
yeah, I mean, to do that, I think we need the final application form, because that'll have areas that we would assign a point system to, basically.
Okay, this is it. This is the final. Okay. And on that, when do you guys want to meet next? Dennis, are you still with us?
Still with you. I heard every word. I was a little concerned about who was going to tell these applicants they weren't eligible.
No.
That was my major concern. My second major-
Co-chair.
I mean, if you leave it to one person, I'm not sure that's going to work out well.
Right, and I don't think we should be trying to rank them right now before we get their actual application in.
But I think you want to look at the basics of it, They have some major flaws, and obviously they're not.
Right, if it's a major flaw or something, they just can't get funding from ARPA out of this, we should tell them. Maybe they can revise their idea and submit a new type of application. Okay, sorry, Mr. Agnew.
That's all right. I was just going to say the National Science Foundation has a nice routine that they go through where if you're completely off base, they're going to tell you you're completely off base. But if they think the project has merit, they'll give you feedback and suggestions. And, it might be something you want to think about. If it's a project that it doesn't quite fit, but we think, wow, it's a cool idea. You give them some advice on how to make it eligible.
Okay,
We may want to have a little subcommittee with Ethan and
I would volunteer to be on that.
Wayne.
great. Okay, Dennis will chair that. With Ray and Wayne.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help with that.
You, Rachel.
If you don't mind, Dennis.
Not at all, Rachel.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we made it really clear with the project
with the
solicitation
resolution.
form that it was not a guarantee of funding. We're looking for ideas. And to your point, we did get a lot of good information. See if we can decide.
Mr. Moore brought up a good recommendation. You want to
Sure.
advise?
Just wondering if there's support for having Wayne go to personnel on Thursday to request an administrative position if he's ready for that.
Yeah.
We could refer him to personnel and he'll put the details down on paper. We could adopt a resolution as soon as Thursday if that's what the board would like to do.
This is, when you had said you have someone who already works full-time or part-time and you want to create a full-time position for that person to
Correct.
do ARPA work.
Correct.
I'm totally in support of
only
that if I'm
thing
allowed to
is-
say that from chair.
I have not discussed it with that person because the position's not been there. So I've not gotten anybody's hopes up. So, I mean, but I think what we do, and the administrator and I had a discussion this afternoon before this meeting, is that the position is office specialist. We have a part-time office specialist position. My recommendation is we create a full-time office specialist position, leave the part-time there until the full-time is filled. Because if the person that I'm thinking it's not worth it for them to make the transition from where they're at least we're still covered in our office for the things that this person does 20 hours a week.
Okay, give you some flexibility, but not to have two positions
No,
for right
no.
now. Okay,
One or the other.
one or the other. Okay. Do we need a resolution or can we get consensus from the committee
New consensus.
to ask Wayne to bring that through on Thursday? A personnel?
I got no problem. He's doing the paperwork.
I thought we did this last. I'm sorry.
We already authorized the funding for it, but he didn't get the administrative approval for the actual position, is my understanding.
Correct.
But
I did send on our last meeting to you, Wayne. I know you were concerned about who was on those emails and, or not Wayne and Ethan, sample job descriptions, salaries in other areas, wording for all those types of things. So
we did, that's right. We do have a job description. It didn't go through?
Going with us.
Yeah. That didn't get a board approval?
No, that wasn't part of the,
No.
It was just the money for that position.
correct.
Just
Okay.
creating the.
Well, what we did is we created the assistant county planner position too, and that's
That's
separate.
separate.
That's separate.
No, this
But,
is,
And then we set aside the 3%, but there was no position identified with that per se. I did, as part of my proposal for that, included a narrative description of
yes.
how we would do that, but I
know,
don't
'cause
see
you
that
gave that-
language in the resolution.
Okay. Well, let's just button that up. If everyone's okay with us getting that forward on Thursday, if we need to, can you just double check that?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right, good. Is everyone available in 2 weeks? From today,
Today is the.
June
31st.
14th?
So what is it?
It's a Tuesday, June 14th,
Flag Day.
Flag Day.
I'm good.
I'm
Okay.
good.
I'm not.
Anybody else?
You're really not, Rachel? Is everyone else available?
I can zoom in.
You're
I'll
not?
try.
Yes? Okay, Ryan, we'll have to go without you. Rachel, zoom in. Anybody else? Okay. 14th at 3. Can you make sure it gets out? Thank you. Yes, Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, thank you. Privilege of the floor. I had
Yes,
it since you guys were getting ready to adjourn.
yeah, thank you.
We know that from an economic standpoint, we're suffering with workforce. Liza put in an application quite a while ago. It's number E5 for employment counselors to support the summer youth program. That program starts in a number of weeks. And the number of youth that will be part of this program this year is actually larger than it has been in years past, which is a good thing. But there's also some additional children and youth with special needs. So she had a request in for some funding to help with some counselors. And I was wondering if this committee would consider making a resolution to provide the money to support these counselors during the summer youth program this year and hopefully for following years. So original request was 150,000. I'm not sure if you want to do that, but that would be my recommendation.
Would next meeting be soon enough?
Well, we could get it through full board Thursday. Summer youth program is going to start when school lets out.
I thought that she had referred this to her committee. Did it pass? The additional counselors? She's looking for funding. I know that. And
It's the funding she did when she went through the committee, and I'm just going to go recall because I'm not 100% sure on this. But I believe she stated to the committee that she had requested funding from ARPA for this. And this application's been in there for quite a
she's
while.
one of the ones that submitted ideas through the project solicitation form, and there's actually several different ones. And when we had talked, this was months ago, why is this, there was not an immediate need, so we kind of put that on the back burner. We can bring it back up as early as 2 weeks, especially if she has the positions. I think
That's it. I don't think she has. I believe they're on for the personnel committee meeting on Thursday.
to be approved.
I believe so. I'm just double checking that.
And how is she going to fund that if she doesn't have ARPA?
It's either going to be general fund or ARPA.
So why don't you make a motion condition on getting positions approved on Thursday?
I don't mind doing that.
Do we know how much it is for this year, though?
This year would
kind of
probably be approximately 30,000.
For this
So
year?
30,000 would probably be enough to suffice for this year.
I'll make that motion.
It's pretty compelling and.
Yeah.
That I 2 weeks, they're gonna probably need to start the hiring
Yeah.
process before that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to basically distribute $30,000 for summer
Youth and-
workforce training counselors,
Counselors, yes.
contingent upon personnel and finance and full board approval of those positions.
Exactly.
Okay. Any further
So
discussion?
here's what we can tell you, and actually, if you want to go to the Warren County Public Health Facebook page, there's a quote from Janelle Jones.
Is there any other further discussion on that? Go ahead.
Can you just refer to the application so I can know the exact dollar amount? I have the packet.
Yep,
If we're gonna require people to have applications and
Page-
forms in,
E5.
she's got a form in
46 out
there.
of
36.
46 out of 68.
I fully intended to bring Liza back and have her give us a presentation on all of her different proposals.
Now, this budget indicates 150,000 on page 46.
I think that was for multiple
Multiple
years.
years.
Multiple years.
That's multiple years.
So what I'd like to do is just get it funded this, at least for this year.
Could I
Supervisor
clarify
Seaver.
my question?
Yeah.
I don't see in the application, and please call my attention to it, where it says it's for multiple, the next 4 summers. So you're coming up with that, just, if you did 4 summers times 30, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a math whiz here, but I'm sure a budget officer can tell me that doesn't equal 150.
I think it's in 4 years.
Probably
after
factors in inflation.
5 years total.
Yeah. 30, between 120, right?
Right.
22, 23, 24, 25.
They say in 4
26.
years after
Oh, you're
the,
fine.
this
There's
year.
5 program years.
Yeah, 4
There's-
years after this year.
So
it's
we're
5
just
programs.
approving the 1 year right now based on Thursday's approval from committee. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And Liza will be back next meeting.
Well, now I don't think we need to as urgently as if we're doing this.
All right.
Wayne?
I don't recall at the committee meeting, but Ryan, when there was the creation of those positions, was there a funding source? No, it was just creating the positions. All right, I didn't know if it was already coming out of general fund and we were going to reimburse general fund or for that. So, okay.
So we have a motion. I will
Yeah.
second.
Oh,
Supervisor
Okay, so
Dixon's
this is,
motion.
again, a motion for 30,000 to fund summer employment counselors just for 2022 season, contingent upon approval by the Board of Supervisors
My bad.
through the whole process. Okay.
Yep.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
I
Thank
think
you.
you ought to bring her in and finish her off.
Okay.
Thank you, Dennis.
Eliza.
We'll do that.
We got a meeting, put her on the agenda. Let's wrap it up.
All right, I'll see if she's available that day to come and do the rest of her. She's waiting to be let in. Good afternoon, Liza. Thanks for joining us. We just did pass a resolution for 30,000.
Okay,
For the summer employment contingent on the full board passing a resolution approving those positions.
thank you so much. If I may just provide a little bit of clarity so everybody's on the same page. So yes, the original request was for 150,000 for about 50,000 each summer for the next 4 summers. I decreased that for this summer to 30,000 because we're getting a late start. In the future summers, we want to have those people start helping us in May through the application process, or April maybe. So so that was the reason for the change in number. And then the title is called Job Coach, which was presented to committee last week and is on the agenda for personnel this week.
Okay, Amanda, can you make that administrative change to the correct title? Whatever I said was not correct. Thank you. Any questions for Liza? And Liza, if you're available for our next meeting, we'll have you come and talk about your other proposals.
Sure, thank you.
15th. Okay,
Thank you so much.
great. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Any other privilege of the floor? Yes, Wayne.
I seem to recall under item 5 here, referrals. I thought we had a pending item on the meals program,
Mm,
but I don't see it listed as pending, but I thought there was going to be some follow-up on that. Ryan threw out some quick numbers at the end of the last meeting, but
Do you have any update for us?
I have no update beyond last meeting. No.
can we carry that as a pending?
Yeah, we can put that on. You have any problem with that?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
That was
Yes.
the program to go to 5 days a week,
5
right?
days a week meal delivery, yes. I did notice that Mr. Lehman was pushing out a bunch of social media about requesting drivers recently. Supervisor Seaver.
Just another pending item. I know that RFP went out and the results, what are we doing with that? I'm unclear whether that was supposed to be ARPA or OCTAX or both.
We did get solicitation responses back, and I did talk to Mr. Moore this afternoon about, have we committed to ARPA funding? And the answer is maybe. We haven't committed to that. It's a possibility that we would use ARPA funding. Do you want to talk about that? more?
Right, yeah, the types of proposals that we anticipate getting back from that RFP, they could potentially fit into ARPA depending on what they are. They could fit into OCTAX depending on what they are. They could fit into general fund. It depends what they are. And whichever, if there's interest among supervisors in pursuing any of them, then we would run it through the appropriate committee, either here or the OCTAX committee, or I would think through the Economic Growth Committee if it's general fund dollars.
Then my only follow-up is that it was here that there was a vote taken with interest to go out for the RFP. So I think it should be a pending item and
Okay.
we should get an update on it.
Great, yeah. I have not seen them yet. We'll do that.
Yeah, if any supervisors or staff would like to see them, I have them now in electronic copy. So just let me know. I'll be happy to get it to you. Great.
Hey, without anything else, motion to adjourn?
Hi, Chairwoman Bramer.
Yes?
There was an email that was sent in by Kim Sopcich from Family Services Association. She had wanted to comment on YouTube, but wasn't able to. Do you want me to read that into the record?
Yes, please.
Uh,
I know
Kim
she's been
Sopcich-
attending many of our meetings, so I know she's.
Yeah, she said she couldn't make this one, but wanted to get the point across. She wrote, I wanted to point out that nonprofits are not just chicken dinner fundraising organizations. Some, like FSA, stayed open during the pandemic and had staff report every day, provided essential services such as food, emergency RX, and transportation. Others may have provided counseling and respite services. Some agencies have budgets of a few $100,000 and some have multi-million-dollar budgets. They all must run like a business and keep careful records, file tax returns, etc. Plus, we are all very used to submitting reports on any funding we receive. Maybe a very small organization such as Little League might not have to, but most nonprofits are used to seeking funds and reporting on the usage. And that's what she had to write.
Point well taken, Ms. Sopcich. Thank you. Anything else? Motion to adjourn Supervisor Dickinson, second by Supervisor Beatty, all in favor? Aye. Thank you all.